In 1895, American heiresses were literally sold for $2.5 million each to British aristocrats who treated them like breeding stock. The going rate for a duke was higher than for an earl, and your father paid top dollar for yours. Hey, if these stories help you sleep, a like or subscribe would be cool. Also drop where you're listening from and the time. I always read the comments, and it's crazy seeing people from like Australia and Norway on the same video. Alright, let's head back to 1895. Trust me, it's gonna be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're gonna want to be cozy. The first thing that hits you is the air. Heavy, damp, and tasting of coal. London, 1895. Your eyes adjust to the grey morning light filtering through unfamiliar curtains. The bed beneath you isn't the one you grew up with in your family's New York mansion. This one's older. Heavier, the sheets are fine linen but smell faintly of mildew that never quite leaves these ancient houses. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. The ocean crossing took 8 days. 8 days of your mother drilling you on proper etiquette while your stomach heaved with each Atlantic swell. 8 days of trying not to cry as America disappeared behind you, possibly forever. Unlike your cozy bed at home, this mattress is stuffed with horsehair that pokes through in places, and the room is freezing despite it being May. Welcome to your new life as a duchess. You sit up slowly, and that's when reality crashes down again. The ring on your left hand catches the light, diamonds and sapphires set in platinum, passed down through your husband's family for 3 centuries. It's heavy, too big for your finger. Like everything else here, it wasn't made for you. Good morning, Your Grace. The voice startles you. A maid, no, your lady's maid, stands by the fireplace. You didn't hear her come in. She's been waiting, watching you sleep. In your family's New York home, servants knocked. Here, they appear like ghosts, always present, always observing. "Shall I open the curtains fully, Your Grace?" she asks, her accent making the words sound like a different language entirely. You nod, because what else can you do? You're no longer Charlotte Miller from Fifth Avenue, you're Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington, and you have absolutely no idea what that means. The curtains part, and London spills into your bedroom, or rather, one of your bedrooms in one of your houses. Harrington House occupies almost an entire block of Mayfair. It has 64 rooms, 11 fireplaces, and a staff of 38 people who now answer to you. A 20-year-old American who, until yesterday, had never managed anything more complicated than her social calendar. His Grace requests your presence for breakfast in the morning room at 9 o'clock, the maid says, already laying out your clothes. Not the clothes you brought from New York. Those were quietly removed from your trunks last night. Apparently, American fashion wouldn't do for a duchess, even an American one. Your stomach twists. You've been married for exactly 16 days, most of which were spent on a ship. Your husband, the Duke, is practically a stranger, a 40-year-old man with cold eyes and a title that's been in his family since the Norman Conquest. You met him exactly 3 times before the wedding, always with chaperones present. "What time is it now?" you ask, your voice sounding small in the vast bedroom. 8:15, Your Grace. 45 minutes. You have 45 minutes to transform from terrified American girl to English duchess. You want to pull the covers back over your head and vanish, but that's not an option anymore. Your father paid too much for this title for you to hide. Okay? Picture this. You're standing in front of a mirror while 3 women you've never met before are literally dressing you. Not helping you dress, dressing you like you're a doll. One holds your corset strings, pulling until your ribs creak and your breath comes in shallow gasps. Another pins your hair into a style you've never worn. The third kneels at your feet, sliding on silk stockings because apparently a duchess doesn't even put on her own socks. "Is this really necessary for breakfast?" you manage to ask between constricted breaths. Your lady's maid, Stevens, you think her name is, looks scandalized. "His Grace expects proper appearance at all times, Your Grace." Of course he does. The Duke of Harrington, your husband, expects a lot of things. Proper appearance, proper behaviour, proper breeding, eventually. That's what you're here for, after all. $2 million for a title, a bloodline for an heir, a business transaction dressed up as a love match. The dress they pour you into is navy blue silk with a high collar and too many buttons. It's beautiful in a severe English way, nothing like the colourful gowns you wore in New York. It makes you look older, more serious, less American. When they finish, you hardly recognise yourself. The woman in the mirror could be anyone, any English lady with enough money and breeding to look this polished at breakfast time. Is this what your mother wanted when she paraded you through London society last season? Is this what your father paid for? You're guided through corridors lined with ancestral portraits, all of them staring down with the same cold eyes as your husband. Distant relatives, now yours by contract if not by blood. The house is a maze designed to impress rather than welcome. Your footsteps echo on marble floors past furniture that hasn't been moved in centuries. The morning room is smaller than you expected, but still intimidating with its silk-covered walls and views of the private garden. And there he is, the Duke, your husband, reading a newspaper as if this were any ordinary day. "Ah, Charlotte," he says without looking up. Not "my dear," or even "good morning." Just your name, spoken as if remembering it requires effort. "I trust you slept well." "Yes, thank you," you lie. You slept terribly, crying silently into a pillow that smelled wrong in a bed that felt like a stranger's. "Good. We have much to discuss." He finally looks at you, his gaze assessing rather than affectionate. "You'll need to learn quickly. The season is upon us, and everyone will be watching the American Duchess." The way he says American makes it sound like a disease. You feel your cheeks flush with humiliation and anger. Your family's money was good enough to save his estate, but your heritage remains a shameful secret. "I've arranged for Lady Howick to call this afternoon. She'll begin your education." His mouth twitches in what might be amusement. "The Queen has expressed interest in meeting you at next week's garden party. We cannot have you embarrassing the family." The Queen, Queen Victoria, the actual Queen of England, wants to meet you, and all you can think is that you're going to trip over your dress and cause an international incident. A footman appears with breakfast. Eggs, kippers, toast, things that smell fishy and unfamiliar. Your stomach churns again. "You're very quiet, Charlotte," the Duke observes, finally setting aside his newspaper. You want to scream. You want to tell him that you've been ripped from everything familiar and comfortable, married to a stranger, and dropped into a world where you don't know the rules. You want to ask if he even sees you as a person or just as the solution to his financial problems. Instead, you say, "I'm still adjusting to the journey, Your Grace." "Edward," he corrects absently. "In private, you may call me Edward." It's the first almost kind thing he's said to you. You try to smile, but your face feels frozen. "Your lady's maid," he continues. "Is she suitable?" You have no idea what makes a lady's maid suitable. "She seems very efficient. She comes highly recommended. Served the Countess of Merrick before her passing." He takes a sip of tea. "If she doesn't suit, we can find another." The casual way he discusses replacing someone, as if servants are just another piece of furniture to be swapped out, makes you uncomfortable. Back home, your family's staff had been with you for years. You knew their names, their families. "I'm sure she'll be fine," you say, then immediately wonder if that sounded too American. Should a duchess care more about having the perfect lady's maid? "I'll be at my club until dinner," Edward announces, standing abruptly. "Lady Harwick will arrive at 2. Do try to pay attention to her instructions, Charlotte. The Harrington name has stood for 800 years. I won't have it tarnished now." And with that, he's gone, leaving you alone in a room too big and too quiet, wearing clothes too stiff, in a life too strange. Hold up. Let me paint you a picture of what happens next. The moment your husband leaves, a small army of servants appears, as if they've been hiding behind the curtains. The butler wants to know your preferences for dinner. The housekeeper needs approval for the weekly menus. The social secretary, yes, you apparently have one of those now, has a stack of calling cards from curious aristocrats who want to inspect the American curiosity. I don't, you stammer, overwhelmed by questions you don't understand about people you've never met regarding customs you've never learned. The social secretary, Mrs. Finch, a thin woman with shrewd eyes, seems to take pity on you. "Perhaps, Your Grace, we might review these matters after your session with Lady Harwick?" You could kiss her. Yes, that would be preferable. The others withdraw with small bows and curtsies, leaving you with Mrs. Finch. "If I may be so bold, Your Grace," she says once the others have gone, "might I suggest a tour of the house? It would be beneficial for you to become familiar with your new home. Your new home. 64 rooms of guilt and history and judgment. But Mrs. Finch is right. You can't hide in the morning room forever." "Yes, thank you," you say, standing straighter, trying to channel your mother's confidence. "That would be most helpful." The next hour passes in a blur of rooms, each more intimidating than the last. The main drawing room, where you'll receive important visitors. The blue drawing room for more intimate gatherings. The formal dining room, which seats 40. The library, with books older than your entire country. The Duke's study, which you're informed you should never enter without invitation. Your brain swims with rules. Never use the grand staircase when the small one will do. Never address the butler in front of guests. Never wear diamonds before evening. Never, never, never appear anything less than perfect. By the time you reach the portrait gallery, your head is pounding. Generations of Harringtons stare down at you, men with Edward's same cold eyes, women with tight smiles who came before you, many of them American heiresses just like you, their fortunes consumed by this ancient house and its insatiable needs. "This is the late Duchess," Mrs. Finch says, stopping before a portrait of a severe-looking woman with Edward's thin mouth. His Grace's mother. You study the painting, looking for clues about the family you've married into. The woman looks proud, unyielding. There's no warmth in her painted eyes. What was she like, you ask, hoping for some insight. Mrs. Finch hesitates, her professional demeanour slipping for just a moment. "She was devoted to maintaining the dignity of the Harrington name, Your Grace," which tells you absolutely nothing and everything all at once. "And this," Mrs. Finch continues, moving to the next portrait, "is the 8th Duke and Duchess, American, like yourself. The woman in this painting is younger, prettier, with something sad around her eyes despite her formal pose. Another dollar princess, another American girl sold to save an English title. What happened to her, you ask, unable to look away from those sad eyes. She died quite young, Your Grace. Childbed fever after delivering the heir." Your stomach drops. Of course, the heir. That's what awaits you too. Pregnancy, childbirth, producing the next duke to continue this ancient line. It's what your father paid for, what Edward expects, what England demands of you. In your head, you're screaming, "This is how I die. In this cold country, in this colder house, giving birth to a child who'll inherit everything, including their father's disdain for anything American." Mrs. Finch must notice your expression because her voice softens slightly. "Perhaps we should continue to the gardens, Your Grace. The fresh air might be beneficial." You nod, unable to speak, and follow her down more corridors, past more judging ancestors, through more rooms where you don't belong. The gardens, at least, are beautiful, formal English landscaping stretching toward a small lake. In the distance, you can see groundskeepers working, more staff you'll never really know. "The roses are particularly fine in June," Mrs. Finch says, watching you carefully. "The late Duke was most proud of them. You think of your family's garden in Newport, wild with summer flowers, the ocean breeze carrying salt and freedom. Here, even the flowers are constrained, growing in neat, predictable patterns." "Your Grace," Mrs. Finch says after a moment of silence, "if I might offer some advice?" You turn to her, desperate for any guidance. "Please." English society can be challenging for those not born to it, but you're not the first American to become a duchess, and you won't be the last. She straightens her already perfect posture. Observe carefully, speak little until you're certain, and remember that while they may judge your accent or your manners, your position is unassailable. You are the Duchess of Harrington now. It's the most honest thing anyone has said to you since you arrived. Not comforting, exactly, but real. "Thank you, Mrs. Finch," you say, meaning it. A clock chimes somewhere in the vast house. Mrs. Finch checks her watch. "Lady Harwick will arrive shortly, Your Grace. We should return to prepare for her visit." You take one last look at the garden, at the tiny piece of England that's supposedly yours now, and follow Mrs. Finch back into the mausoleum you're expected to call home. The house feels even larger from the inside than it did from your carriage last night. The ceilings soar so high they disappear into shadow. The furniture, mostly 18th century by the look of it, seems designed for discomfort rather than use. Everything gleams with the labour of servants you'll never fully see. "Your Grace, if I may," Mrs. Finch says as you approach the main staircase. "Lady Harwick is traditional in her views. It would be wise to listen more than speak during your first meeting." Great. Another person who's going to find you hopelessly American and unsuitable. "I understand." "Very good, Your Grace. Stevens will assist you in changing for Lady Harwick's visit." "Changing? Again? Is this outfit not appropriate?" You gesture to the navy silk dress you've been wearing for barely 3 hours. Mrs. Finch's expression doesn't change, but you sense her internal wincing. "Morning attire is not suitable for afternoon callers, Your Grace. Stevens will have prepared something more appropriate." "Of course. Heaven forbid you wear the same dress for an entire day." You nod and head upstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Your bedroom? No, the Duchess's bedroom, which still feels like someone else's space, has been tidied in your absence. Stevens is already waiting with yet another outfit laid out on the bed. "Lady Harwick is quite punctual, Your Grace," she says by way of greeting. "We should begin dressing immediately." And so the process starts again. Unlacing, relacing, pinning, buttoning. This dress is dark green with elaborate beading that weighs a ton. The corset is tightened even further if that's possible. Your hair is adjusted, your face powdered, your entire being reshaped into something alien. "Will I need to change again before dinner?" you ask, trying not to sound as exhausted as you feel. "Of course, Your Grace. Dinner requires evening dress." Stevens says this as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. You close your eyes briefly. 4 outfits in one day. In New York, you might change for a special dinner or ball, but not just to sit in different rooms of your own house. "Your Grace," Stevens says, breaking into your thoughts, "Lady Harwick has arrived." You brace yourself, pulling your shoulders back despite the protest of your corseted ribs. Time to meet the woman who's going to teach you how to be English. Lady Harwick is waiting in the smaller drawing room, a tiny bird-like woman dressed entirely in black despite not being in mourning. Her grey hair is pulled so tightly into a bun that it seems to stretch her skin, giving her a perpetually surprised expression. She doesn't stand when you enter, which you're pretty sure is a deliberate slight. "So," she says, examining you through a lorgnette, "you're the American, not Your Grace or Duchess, just the American." You force a smile and extend your hand. "Charlotte Harrington." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lady Harwick." She ignores your hand, which hovers awkwardly in the air before you withdraw it. "Sit," she commands, gesturing to a chair opposite hers. You sit, trying to maintain your dignity despite the humiliation burning in your cheeks. "Let us be clear from the beginning," Lady Harwick says, setting aside her lorgnette. "You have purchased a title that has been in Edward's family for centuries. Your father's railroad money may have saved Harrington House, but it does not automatically make you worthy of being its mistress." The brutal honesty takes your breath away. In New York, people might gossip behind your back, but no one would ever be this direct to your face. You begin, but she cuts you off with a raised hand. "I am not interested in your feelings, child. I am here at Edward's request, to ensure you do not embarrass him or the Harrington name. You will listen, you will learn, and you will become what England requires of you." In your head, you're thinking, your brain's doing the math. No bath for 3 months, death by smell. Except it's not smell that's going to kill you here. It's these people with their rigid rules and colder hearts. But outwardly, you simply nod. What else can you do? You're alone in a foreign country, married to a stranger, surrounded by people who see you as nothing more than a walking bank account. "Good," Lady Harwick says, apparently satisfied with your submission. "We shall begin with the basics, the proper forms of address for various ranks of nobility. And so begins your education as a duchess. For the next 2 hours, Lady Harwick drills you on an endless list of rules. Never address a duke before he addresses you, unless you outrank him by marriage, which you now do in some cases, a fact that seems to pain Lady Harwick physically. Never turn your back on someone of royal blood. Never discuss politics, religion, or money in polite company. Your head spins with titles and protocols, earls versus viscounts, younger sons of marquises, dowager duchesses, lady this and lord that, each with their own precise form of address that will mortally offend them if you get it wrong. Your posture is atrocious, Lady Harwick announces suddenly. "Stand!" You obey, rising on legs that have gone numb from sitting so long. Back straight, shoulders down, chin parallel to the floor. She demonstrates, her own posture impossibly rigid. A duchess does not slouch. You try to mimic her stance, feeling like a performing monkey. "Better," she concedes reluctantly. "Now walk to the window and back." You do as instructed, painfully aware of her critical gaze. "Smaller steps," she snaps. "You're not racing to catch a streetcar. English ladies glide, they do not stride." For the next 15 minutes you walk back and forth across the drawing room, adjusting your pace, your posture, the position of your hands, until Lady Harwick is marginally satisfied. "We shall work on your curtsy tomorrow," she says finally, "and your accent. That flat American sound must be softened. Even the way you speak isn't good enough. You swallow hard against the lump forming in your throat." "One last thing," Lady Harwick says, rising from her chair. "The Queen. You are to be presented next week. Your stomach drops. So soon. Her Majesty is curious about Edward's American bride. Lady Harwick's tone makes it clear this isn't a compliment. You will curtsy deeply. We shall practice extensively and speak only when spoken to. Address her as Your Majesty first, then Ma'am thereafter. Keep your answers brief and defer to her in all things. Meeting Queen Victoria, the most powerful woman in the world. The thought makes you lightheaded. Do not disgrace the Harrington name, Lady Harwick adds, gathering her things. Remember that when you appear before the Queen, you represent not only yourself, but centuries of English nobility. No pressure or anything. Lady Harwick departs with a promise, or perhaps a threat, to return tomorrow for another lesson. You remain in the drawing room after she leaves, too drained to move, too overwhelmed to think. This is your life now. Endless rules, constant judgment, a husband who sees you as a solution to his financial problems, and a society that sees you as an interloper. You're a duchess in name, but a prisoner in reality. A soft knock at the door interrupts your spiralling thoughts. Mrs. Finch enters, her face carefully neutral. Your Grace, His Grace has sent word that he will be dining at his club this evening. Would you prefer to dine in your rooms or in the small dining room? Alone. You'll be dining alone on your second night in England. Part of you is relieved not to face Edward and his cold scrutiny. Another part aches with loneliness so profound it's physical. My rooms, please, you say, not wanting to sit by yourself in that cavernous dining room. Very good, Your Grace. Mrs. Finch hesitates, then adds, Would you care to write to your family this evening? I could arrange for stationery to be brought to your sitting room. The mention of your family breaks something inside you. Your mother, who pushed for this match with single-minded determination. Your father, who treated your marriage like a business merger. Your sisters, who envied your fairy tale wedding to a duke. Do any of them understand what they've sentenced you to? Yes, you manage to say. Thank you. When Mrs. Finch leaves, you cross to the window, looking out at the London afternoon. Rain has started to fall, grey and relentless, mirroring your mood. Carriages roll past on the street below, carrying people with destinations and purposes. Meanwhile, you're trapped in this gilded cage, expected to transform yourself into someone unrecognisable. In this moment, standing alone in a stranger's house that's supposedly yours, wearing clothes that don't feel like yours, bearing a title that doesn't feel like yours, you make a silent promise to yourself. You will learn their rules, you will master their customs, you will become what they need you to be. But deep inside, in the place they can't reach, you'll remain Charlotte Miller from New York, and someday, somehow, you'll find a way to make this life your own. Unlike your warm bed back home, this room feels empty despite its opulence. The rain taps against the windows like distant Morse code, spelling out messages from a world that now seems impossibly far away. You place your hand against the cold glass, watching your breath fog the pain. The only proof that there's still something alive in this mausoleum of tradition. Tomorrow you'll begin again. Lady Harwick and her endless rules, a household waiting for your direction, a husband you barely know, a queen you're terrified to meet. But tonight, just for these quiet hours, you allow yourself to remember who you were before you became Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington. Before your father sold you for a title and your mother measured your worth in aristocratic connections. You remember summer afternoons in Newport, salt air and freedom. You remember laughing without worrying who might be listening. You remember being Charlotte, just Charlotte. The girl you were seems like a stranger now, as distant as the New York skyline you watch disappear from the deck of the ocean liner, yet you carry her with you still, hidden beneath corsets and titles, waiting. Somewhere in this vast, cold house, a clock chimes the hour. Another day in your new life has almost passed. One down, thousands to go. Morning comes too soon. You open your eyes to the same unfamiliar ceiling, the same heavy curtains, the same sinking feeling in your stomach. For one blissful moment, between sleep and wakefulness, you forget where you are. Then Stephen's voice cuts through the fog. "Good morning, Your Grace. Lady Harwick will arrive at 10 o'clock for your lessons." Day 2, as a duchess, begins exactly like day 1, being dressed by strangers, picking at unfamiliar food and preparing to be judged. The rain from yesterday has cleared, but the sky outside your window remains stubbornly grey, as if England itself refuses to welcome you. Edward, your husband, though the word still feels foreign in your mind, left a note rather than appearing in person. "Business in the city," it says. "Dinner tonight with Lord and Lady Wexford," it warns. "Be prepared." Be prepared, as if you have any idea what that means. Okay, imagine trying to curtsy in a dress that weighs more than a small child while balancing a book on your head and being stared at by a woman whose face seems permanently frozen in disapproval. That's your morning with Lady Harwick? "Again," she commands after your 5th attempt. "Lower, smoother. You're not collapsing, Your Grace. You're honouring." Your thighs burn with the effort. The heavy beaded dress you've been stuffed into makes balance nearly impossible. The book, some ancient volume of English poetry, wobbles dangerously on your head. "My lady," you begin, desperate for a break. "Lady Harwick," she corrects sharply, "not my lady. That form of address is for servants speaking to their employers." Another mistake. You've lost count of how many you've made this morning. "Lady Harwick," you try again. "Perhaps we might rest a moment." She sighs like you've suggested burning down Buckingham Palace. "The Queen will not rest a moment, Your Grace, nor will English society pause while you catch your breath." Again. And so you dip again into a curtsy that makes your knees protest and your spine strain against whalebone and lacing. "Your hands," Lady Harwick scolds. "Not clenched, relaxed, graceful." Lady Harwick's like, "Your curtsy is an insult to 800 years of English nobility," and you're thinking, your face is an insult to human evolution, but outwardly you just adjust your hands, trying to make them look relaxed while your entire body screams with tension. In your head, you're screaming, "I paid $2.5 million to be treated like this." Well, your father did, and right now you'd give another $1 million just to be back home in New York, lounging in the garden with a novel instead of performing like a trained seal for this withered aristocrat. "Better," Lady Harwick concedes finally, though her tone suggests better is still miles from acceptable. "Now, let us review the dinner service. How many pieces of silverware should be at each place setting for a formal dinner?" You hesitate, mentally counting the ridiculous array of specialized utensils you were introduced to yesterday. 16, 22, she corrects with obvious disappointment. "Each with its specific purpose and order of use. We shall practice at luncheon." The thought of eating under her critical gaze makes your appetite vanish, but you nod obediently. This is your life now. Endless lessons in things no rational person would consider important. "After luncheon we shall discuss household management," Lady Harwick continues, consulting a small notebook. "As Duchess, you are responsible for overseeing a staff of nearly 40 at Harrington House alone, not counting the country estate. You must learn their duties, their hierarchies, and how to properly direct them without seeming to give direct orders." Heaven forbid a duchess actually tell someone what to do in clear language. Everything here is wrapped in layers of suggestion and implication. You're beginning to understand why the English aristocracy is dying out. They're too exhausted from following their own rules to reproduce. "Is something amusing, Your Grace?" Lady Howick asks sharply. You realize you've been smiling at your own thoughts. No, Lady Howick, I'm simply eager to learn. She doesn't believe you. Her pinched expression makes that clear, but she continues. This afternoon, the dressmaker will arrive for your fitting. The garden party at Buckingham Palace is only 5 days away, and your current wardrobe is entirely unsuitable. The garden party, meeting the Queen. Your stomach twists with anxiety. What will be expected of me? To be silent unless spoken to curtsy properly, to represent the Harrington name with dignity. Lady Howick closes her notebook with a snap. In short, to be English, not American, for at least one afternoon. The morning drags on. You practice walking with books on your head. You memorize the correct order of precedence for seating aristocrats at dinner. You learn which fork is for shellfish and which for dessert. By luncheon, your brain feels stuffed with useless information, none of which seems designed to help you navigate your actual life. The dining room, the small one, which still seats 12 comfortably, is set for 3. Lady Howick, you, and to your surprise, Edward has returned from his business in the city. Charlotte, he greets you with a brief nod. Lady Howick tells me you're making progress. The way he says it makes it clear the progress is insufficient. You force a smile. I'm trying, your Edward. The garden party, he says, taking his seat at the head of the table. You understand its importance? Yes, you answer, though you're not entirely sure you do. Is it just about meeting the Queen, or is there more at stake? The Harringtons have served the crown for centuries, Edward explains, apparently reading your confusion. Royal favour is essential to our position. The Queen has expressed specific interest in meeting you. It is unusual, Lady Howick sniffs. Her Majesty has always had a curiosity about Americans, ever since that Churchill woman married Lord Randolph. You've heard of Jenny Jerome Churchill, another American heiress who married into British nobility. Her son, Winston, is apparently quite brilliant. Perhaps there's hope for American duchesses after all. The Queen will ask about your family, Edward continues. Your father's business, your education. You will respond truthfully but briefly. No rambling American anecdotes. As if you dare. I understand. Do you? Edward's gaze is cool. Everything we have, this house, our position, the Harrington legacy, depends on maintaining proper relationships. The Queen's favour, society's respect. These are not trivial matters, Charlotte. In other words, don't embarrass him. Don't remind anyone that he had to marry American money to keep his precious legacy intact. Don't be too American. I won't disappoint you, you say, the words tasting bitter. The servants begin serving luncheon, some kind of clear soup that smells faintly of herbs. You watch Lady Howick carefully, mirroring her every move. Napkin just so, spoon from the outside in, sip, don't slurp, back straight, shoulders down. The Wexfords, Edward says after a moment of silence. They're dining with us tonight. The Earl is a close friend from school. His wife is traditional. Another test, another opportunity to fail. I look forward to meeting them, you lie. Lord Wexford serves on several important committees with His Grace, Lady Howick adds. Their connection is valuable to the Harrington interests. Everything here is about connections, about invisible threads of influence and favour. In New York, power was simpler. Whoever had the most money won. Here, it's about bloodlines and traditions and unspoken alliances stretching back generations. Luncheon passes in a blur of corrections from Lady Howick. Your soup spoon is angled wrong. You've taken too large a bite of fish. Your posture has slipped. By the time the dessert arrives, some sort of blancmange that quivers unnervingly on the plate. You're so tense your jaw aches from clenching. Edward, meanwhile, seems oblivious to your distress. He discusses estate matters with Lady Howick as if you're not present, tenant farmers, crop rotations, repairs needed at the country house. The conversation flows around you, not including you. After luncheon, Edward disappears again with barely a goodbye. Lady Howick leads you to the morning room where a massive ledger awaits. The household accounts, she explains. As Duchess, you must review them weekly with the housekeeper and butler. You open the ledger, confronted by columns of neat figures: coal, candles, meat, fish, wine, wages. The cost of running Harrington House is staggering. No wonder Edward needed your father's millions. I've never managed household accounts before, you admit. Lady Harwick's expression suggests this confession ranks somewhere between admitting illiteracy and confessing to murder. Naturally not. American households are run like hotels, I understand. All vulgar excess and no proper accounting. You think of your mother, who ran your family's New York mansion and Newport cottage with military precision, who knew every servant by name and kept immaculate records of every expense. The assumption that Americans can't manage households properly stings. I'm a quick learner, you say, more sharply than intended. Lady Harwick raises an eyebrow at your tone, but continues. You'll meet with Mrs. Hughes, the housekeeper, every Monday morning, Mr. Phelps, the butler, every Tuesday, the cook every Wednesday to plan menus. Thursday is for correspondence. Friday for charitable works. The Harrington name is associated with several important causes. Your week is being carved up into duties before you've even had a chance to settle in. Every hour accounted for, every action prescribed. When do I? You begin, then stop, unsure how to ask. Yes, Lady Howick prompts. When do I have time for myself? The question sounds childish, even to your ears. Lady Harwick looks genuinely puzzled. For yourself? You are the Duchess of Harrington now, Your Grace. Your time belongs to your position, your husband, and your future children. Yourself is a luxury you sacrificed when you accepted the title. The truth of it hits you like a physical blow. You didn't just marry Edward. You married an institution, a legacy, a role that will consume you entirely if you let it. The dressmaker arrives at precisely 2:00. Madame Beaumont, a stern Frenchwoman with pins clenched between her teeth and measuring tape dangling around her neck like a bizarre necklace. Undress, she commands without preamble. You glance at Lady Harwick, who nods. Apparently, modesty is another luxury duchesses don't enjoy. Stevens helps you out of your dress and corset, leaving you standing in your chemise and drawers while Madame Beaumont circles you like a shark. Americaine, she mutters, measuring your waist with brisk efficiency. Trop mince, too thin. English ladies, they have more substance. Lady Harwick makes a sound that might be agreement. You feel like livestock being assessed at market. Arms up, Madame Beaumont orders, pulling the tape measure across your shoulders. The garden party dress must be perfect. The Queen, she notices everything. For the next hour, you stand nearly naked while two women discuss your body as if you're not present. Too thin, shoulders too square from American tennis, complexion too tanned, hair too simply styled. By the time they finish, you feel like every inch of you has been found wanting. Madame Beaumont eventually produces sketches for your approval, though approval seems a formality, as Lady Harwick immediately selects the most conservative design. The garden party dress will be cream silk with delicate embroidery, modest, elegant, thoroughly English. And of course new undergarments, Madame Beaumont adds, making notes. The American corsetry is all wrong. Too much room for breathing. Heaven forbid you be able to breathe properly while meeting the Queen. By 4 o'clock, Lady Harwick finally departs, leaving you with a stack of books on English history, aristocratic genealogy, and proper deportment. Your homework, essentially. The door has barely closed behind her when you collapse onto the nearest sofa, physically and mentally exhausted. Your Grace? You startle at the voice. It's Mrs. Finch, the social secretary, hovering in the doorway. Yes, Mrs. Finch? The calling cards, Your Grace. She approaches with a silver tray piled with small white cards. These arrived today. You should return calls to Lady Pembroke and Lady Harewood tomorrow. They're close to the Queen, and their good opinion would be valuable. More obligations, more tests. You nod wearily. Of course. And Mrs. Finch hesitates, which catches your attention. She's normally so composed. There's a Lady Ashford who's requested to call tomorrow afternoon. She's American, like yourself. Another American married to an Englishman. The thought of speaking to someone who might understand your situation is like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Yes, you say immediately. Please tell her I'd be delighted. Mrs. Finch nods, a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Very good, Your Grace. I'll arrange it for 3 o'clock after your session with Lady Harwick. After she leaves, you remain on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. An American visitor, someone who might understand the isolation, the constant criticism, the feeling of being a foreign object inserted into this ancient machinery. For the first time since arriving in England, you feel a flicker of hope. That flicker dims considerably when Stevens arrives to begin preparing you for dinner. Another elaborate dressing ritual, another gown, burgundy silk this time, with a neckline cut lower than you're comfortable with. Another hour of hair arranging and jewellery selecting. His Grace has instructed that you wear the Harrington rubies tonight, Stevens informs you, opening a velvet box to reveal a necklace of blood-red stones set in heavy gold. The necklace is placed around your throat, its weight surprisingly substantial. In the mirror, you barely recognize yourself. The rubies gleam against your skin like wounds. The gown transforms your figure into something more mature, more imposing. Your hair is arranged in an elaborate style that makes your head ache. You look English. Beautiful, Your Grace, Stevens murmurs, adjusting a final curl. You're not sure beautiful is the right word. Transformed might be more accurate, or erased. The Wexfords arrive precisely at 7. Lord Wexford is a portly man with impressive whiskers and a booming laugh. Lady Wexford is thin, aristocratic, and immediately reminds you of Lady Harwick. The same assessing gaze, the same barely concealed disdain. The American Duchess, Lord Wexford says, kissing your hand with slightly too much enthusiasm. Charming, absolutely charming. How interesting to meet you, Lady Wexford adds, her tone suggesting interesting is not a compliment. We've heard so much about your father's railroads, and there it is, the reminder that you're not really a duchess in their eyes. You're just the daughter of a man with enough money to buy his way into their world. Edward appears at your side, hand at the small of your back, guiding you toward the drawing room. The touch is not affectionate but proprietary, a reminder to perform your role correctly. Charlotte has been working diligently with Lady Harwick, he tells the Wexfords, as a footman serves sherry. The Queen has expressed interest in meeting her at next week's garden party. Indeed, Lady Wexford's eyebrows rise. How unusual. Her Majesty has always had a soft spot for Americans, Lord Wexford says with a chuckle. Ever since young Winston Churchill started making a name for himself, blood will tell, eh? The conversation circles around people you don't know, events that happened before you were born, and subtle social cues you can't begin to decipher. You smile when Edward glances your way, nod at appropriate intervals, and try desperately not to make any obvious mistakes. Dinner is announced and Edward leads Lady Wexford in, while Lord Wexford offers you his arm. The dining room, the formal one this time, gleams with silver and crystal. Candles flicker in heavy silver candelabras. Footmen stand at attention around the perimeter, watching, waiting, judging. I understand you're to be presented at court as well, Lady Wexford says as the soup is served. After the garden party. You look to Edward, who hasn't mentioned any court presentation. He nods slightly. Yes, arrangements are being made. Another test you haven't been prepared for. Your anxiety spikes. My niece, Lady Mary, is being presented this season, Lady Wexford continues. Such a lovely girl. Properly educated at home, of course, not sent to one of those modern schools. The Wexford bloodline goes back to the conquest, you know. The implication is clear. Lady Mary represents everything you're not. English, properly educated, from an ancient bloodline. How fascinating, you manage to reply, using the exact tone your mother employed when dealing with tedious social climbers in New York. The American educational system is quite different, of course. My schooling included mathematics, sciences, and 3 modern languages in addition to the usual feminine accomplishments. Lady Wexford looks slightly taken aback by your response. Edward shoots you a warning glance. Too American, his eyes say, too direct. But Lord Wexford laughs. Capital, the girl has spirit, Harrington. Good American spirit. That's what the old families need these days. Fresh blood and fresh thinking. Dinner proceeds through its many courses. You navigate the array of silverware successfully thanks to Lady Harwick's drilling. You make appropriate small talk about the weather, dreadful, London society, exclusive, and the upcoming season, promising. You avoid politics, religion, and anything remotely controversial. By the time the ladies withdraw to the drawing room, leaving the men to their port and cigars, you're mentally exhausted from the constant vigilance. You've done well with her, Edward, you overhear Lord Wexford say as you exit. Still American, of course, but not entirely hopeless. In the drawing room, Lady Wexford sips her coffee and studies you openly. Tell me, Duchess, how are you finding English society? Very different from New York, I imagine. You choose your words carefully. Different in some ways, yes. But fundamentally, society is society wherever one goes. There are always rules to follow and appearances to maintain. She seems neither impressed nor offended by your answer. And your family, they've returned to America? Yes, after the wedding, leaving you quite alone. There's a hint of something almost like sympathy in her voice. It's never easy being a foreign bride in England, even for Americans. You look at her more closely, wondering if there's actual human feeling beneath the aristocratic facade. No, it's not easy. The first year is the worst, she says, surprising you. The loneliness, the constant feeling of being judged and found wanting, the cold. She sips her coffee. English houses are always cold. Have you noticed? Even in summer, you're so startled by this momentary connection that you answer honestly. I thought it was just me. I've been freezing since I arrived. Extra blankets, she advises, and a hot water bottle. The servants won't think to provide them unless you specifically ask. They assume we're all made of sterner stuff. For a brief moment, she's not Lady Wexford, intimidating aristocrat. She's just a woman offering practical advice to another woman. Then the moment passes and her expression becomes remote again. You'll adjust, she says, or you won't. The title remains either way. When the men rejoin you, the conversation turns to hunting, Edward's passion, politics, carefully general, and London gossip, people you don't know doing things you don't understand. You smile until your face hurts, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and count the minutes until the evening ends. Finally, the Wexfords depart in a flurry of thank yous and promised reciprocal invitations. The door closes behind them and you sag slightly, the tension of the evening catching up with you. Not entirely disastrous, Edward observes, which you suppose is his version of a compliment. Though you were rather forward with Lady Wexford about your education, she was rather forward about my inadequacies, you counter before you can stop yourself. To your surprise, Edward's mouth twitches in what might almost be amusement. Yes, well, Augusta Wexford would find inadequacies in the Archangel Gabriel. The important thing is that Wexford himself was impressed. His influence with the Queen is significant. Always the Queen. Always influence and connections and appearances. Is there anything in Edward's world that isn't calculated for advantage? I'm tired, you say, suddenly unable to maintain the pretense any longer. If you'll excuse me. He studies you for a moment, then nods. Of course, tomorrow will be another busy day, another day of lessons and judgments and reminders that you're not what they wanted, just what they needed to pay their debts. You climb the grand staircase slowly, feeling the weight of the Harrington rubies around your neck, the weight of the Harrington name on your shoulders. In your bedroom, Stevens helps you undress in silence. The rubies are returned to their velvet box, the elaborate gown is whisked away, your hair is unpinned, brushed and braided for sleep. You're prepared for bed as meticulously as you were prepared for dinner. Every step a ritual, every movement choreographed. When Stevens finally leaves, you stand at the window looking out at the London night. Somewhere out there, in one of those houses with gleaming windows, is Lady Ashford, the American who's coming to call tomorrow, someone who might understand, someone who might offer guidance through this maze of rules and expectations. You crawl into the massive bed, pulling the two thin blankets around you, thinking of Lady Wexford's advice about hot water bottles. It's a small thing, but it feels like the first practical help you've received since arriving. Tomorrow will bring Lady Harwick and her endless lessons. It will bring new challenges, new opportunities to fail, but it will also bring Lady Ashford, and with her perhaps a small slice of home. You close your eyes, exhausted but slightly less despairing than the night before, one small step at a time, one rule mastered, one dinner survived, one connection made. You're still Charlotte Miller from New York, even if you're hidden beneath layers of silk and title and expectation. And tomorrow you'll meet another woman who's walking the same tightrope between worlds. Sleep comes more easily tonight, despite the unfamiliar bed and the cold that seeps through the walls of this ancient house. You dream of hot water bottles and American voices and Queen Victoria asking you about railroad stocks while you balance books on your head and curtsy until your knees give out. By your third day in London, you've established a routine of sorts. Wake up cold, get dressed by Stevens while pretending to be fully awake, eat a breakfast you don't really want, endure Lady Harwick's lessons until your brain feels like it's been stuffed with cotton wool. The monotony is almost comforting until you remember that today Lady Ashford is coming. An American. Another woman who crossed an ocean for a title. Someone who might actually understand. Lady Harwick notices your distraction during the morning's lesson on the correct way to address the younger sons of dukes versus the younger sons of earls. "Your Grace," she says sharply, "am I boring you?" "No, Lady Harwick," you answer automatically. "I'm simply processing the information." She sniffs. Processing. How very American. In England, we simply learn. You bite back a response about how in America, education involves understanding rather than rote memorization. Lady Ashford is coming at 3. You just need to survive until then. The morning crawls by. You practice your curtsy until your thighs burn. You memorize the names and titles of every person you might conceivably meet at the Queen's garden party. You learn which flowers are appropriate for which occasions. No lilies at weddings, no chrysanthemums in mixed company, never ever tulips. Lady Ashford, Lady Howick says during luncheon, her tone making the name sound like a disease. She's calling this afternoon? Yes, you reply, trying to keep your voice neutral. Mrs. Finch arranged it. Lady Howick butters a piece of bread with surgical precision. Catherine Ashford, another American, married Lord Ashford 5 years ago, a Boston girl, I believe. The way she says Boston girl suggests it ranks somewhere below scullery maid in her estimation. Is there something wrong with Lady Ashford? You ask, unable to hide your concern. If Lady Howick disapproves, does that mean Edward will forbid the visit? Wrong? No. Lady Howick takes a small, deliberate bite of bread. She's simply modern in her views. Lord Ashford indulges her rather more than is traditional. Modern sounds promising. Indulged sounds even better. I'll be sure to maintain proper decorum during her visit. You promise. Lady Howick gives you a look that suggests she doesn't believe you for a second. See that you do. The Howick name has stood for 800 years. You finish mentally along with her. By the time 3 o'clock approaches, you're practically vibrating with anticipation. Stevens has dressed you in a reception gown of pale blue silk, understated by American standards, but still formal enough to receive a Viscountess. You wait in the smaller drawing room, perched on the edge of a chair that's been in the Harrington family since before your country existed. The clock on the mantel ticks loudly in the silence. Lady Ashford, Phelps announces from the doorway, and your heart leaps. She sweeps in like a breath of fresh air. Tall, auburn-haired, dressed in a gown that's just a touch more fashionable than English propriety dictates. Her smile is genuine, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "Your Grace," she says with a perfect curtsy. "Thank you for receiving me." You rise, remembering at the last second that you're supposed to extend your hand for her to take, not shake hers American style. "Lady Ashford, I'm delighted you could come." The formalities observed, she glances at Phelps, still hovering in the doorway. "Tea, I think? And perhaps some privacy?" Phelps looks momentarily startled. English visitors would never dismiss the butler so directly, but recovers quickly. "Of course, my lady, right away." When the door closes, Lady Ashford's posture changes subtly. The aristocratic bearing softens, and suddenly she's just a woman in her early 30s with laugh lines around her eyes and a conspiratorial smile. "Well," she says, her Boston accent slipping through, "another American in the lion's den. How are you holding up, Duchess?" The direct question, the familiar accent, the simple human concern, it all hits you at once, and to your horror, your eyes fill with tears. "That bad, huh?" Lady Ashford sits beside you, patting your hand. "I cried every day for the first month, sometimes twice. My lady's maid thought I had some kind of medical condition." You laugh through your tears. "Mine probably thinks the same. I'm sorry, I don't usually fall apart in front of strangers." "Of course not. You're American. We're practical people." She hands you a handkerchief from her reticule. "But you're not with a stranger. You're with a fellow survivor of the Anglo-American marriage treaty." Survivor, not victim. The word choice gives you hope. "How did you begin, then stop, unsure how to phrase the question." Survive? Lady Ashford finishes for you, one day at a time, with help, with friendship, and with the understanding that for all their history and tradition, the English aristocracy needs us far more than we need them. The tea arrives, giving you a moment to compose yourself. When the servants withdraw, Lady Ashford leans forward. "Tell me everything," she says. "The good, the bad, and especially the parts where you wanted to strangle someone with their own cravat. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets weird. For the next hour, you talk more freely than you have since leaving America. Lady Ashford, call me Catherine, please, at least when it's just us." Listens, nods, occasionally laughs, and offers advice born of experience. "Lady Harwick," she says, rolling her eyes when you describe your etiquette lessons. "That woman is a walking fossil, useful for understanding the ancient past, but not much help with the present. She's very knowledgeable. You feel compelled to defend, even though you've thought much worse about your tormentor. Oh, she knows which fork to use and how to curtsy to a dowager duchess, but does she understand what it's like to be a woman in 1895? To have crossed an ocean and left everything familiar behind? To navigate a society that both needs you and resents you?" Catherine shakes her head. "For that, you need friends who've walked the same path." Friends. The word sends a surge of longing through you. Are there many of us? American women married to Englishmen? More than you'd think, and more arriving every season. Catherine's eyes twinkle. We even have a name for ourselves, the Dollar Duchesses, though some of us are just countesses or viscountesses. "The Dollar Duchesses," you repeat, testing the phrase. It sounds slightly vulgar, exactly the sort of term Lady Harwick would faint at hearing. "We help each other," Catherine continues. "Advice, support, warnings about which aristocrats to avoid at parties." She leans closer. "And we meet regularly, discreetly." "You meet?" This sounds dangerously close to conspiracy. "Wouldn't our husbands object?" "Our husbands," Catherine says with a slight edge to her voice, "are generally too busy with their clubs, their politics, or their mistresses to notice our little gatherings. Besides, we're just ladies taking tea together. What could be more proper?" The way she says it makes it clear these are not just social calls. There's purpose behind these meetings. "When?" you ask, already knowing you'll attend, even if you have to lie to Edward about where you're going. "Friday, 4 o'clock, Lady Winchester's house on Park Lane." Catherine writes the address on a calling card and slips it to you. "She's one of us. Married the Earl of Winchester 3 years ago, brought enough Chicago meatpacking money to restore their country estate and pay off generations of gambling debts." You tuck the card into your sleeve, feeling like a spy with secret information. "I'll be there." Good. Catherine's expression grows more serious. Until then, a word of advice about the garden party. The Queen is not what you might expect. She's sharper than people realise, and she has a soft spot for Americans, despite what the old guard might tell you. Be respectful, but authentic. She's seen enough simpering debutantes to last several lifetimes. The clock chimes 4, startling you both. Catherine rises with a sigh. "I should go. Aristocratic visiting hours are so tediously rigid, but I'm glad we had this chance to talk, Charlotte. The use of your first name, so natural and friendly, brings tears to your eyes again." "Thank you. For everything." She squeezes your hand. "Welcome to the sisterhood, Duchess. Remember, Friday at 4. After Catherine leaves, you sit alone in the drawing room, her calling card hidden in your sleeve, her words echoing in your mind. The Dollar Duchesses, a sisterhood. For the first time since arriving in England, you feel something like hope. The feeling lasts until dinner, when Edward casually mentions that you'll be attending Lady Dunmore's musical evening tomorrow. I thought the garden party wasn't until next week, you say, fork pausing halfway to your mouth. The garden party is next week, Edward confirms. Lady Dunmore's event is a rehearsal of sorts. Your first public appearance as Duchess of Harrington. Your first public appearance, your first opportunity to embarrass yourself, embarrass Edward, and disgrace the Harrington name that has stood for 800 years. How many people will be there, you ask, trying to keep your voice steady. 50 or 60. Intimate by London standards. Edward takes a sip of wine. The cream of society, several close to the Queen. So not just any 50 or 60 people, the most important, most judgmental, most aristocratic people in London, watching you, evaluating you, waiting for the American Duchess to make a mistake. I see, you manage to say. Edward studies you across the table. Lady Harwick assures me you're adequately prepared. Adequately prepared, like a dish that's been cooked just long enough to avoid food poisoning. Your appetite vanishes. I'll do my best not to embarrass you, you say, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from your voice. It's not about embarrassment, Charlotte. Edward's tone is almost gentle. It's about integration. You're a Harrington now. These people, their opinion matters to our position, our future. Our position, our future, not yours and mine, the Harrington legacy. I understand, you say, because what else can you say? That night you lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, Catherine's words competing with Lady Harwick's in your mind. Be authentic, but be proper. Be American, but not too American. Make connections, but follow the rules. Tomorrow London society will get its first look at the American Duchess of Harrington, and you have no idea if they'll see a triumph or a disaster. I bet you're wondering how this little party went. Let me paint you a picture. Lady Dunmore's music room is a marvel of aristocratic excess. Gilt-edged mirrors, silk-covered walls, and a Steinway grand piano that probably cost more than most people's houses. The room buzzes with a low murmur of upper-class English voices, the women in evening dress, the men in impeccable black and white. You stand just inside the doorway, Edward at your side, feeling like a butterfly pinned to a board. Every eye in the room turns to assess you, the American interloper who's married into one of England's oldest families. Courage, Edward murmurs, so quietly only you can hear. It's the closest thing to support he's offered since your arrival. The next 2 hours blur into a parade of introductions, curtsies, and carefully modulated small talk. You navigate the social minefield with Lady Harwick's lessons ringing in your ears. Don't speak until spoken to. Don't sit before a higher-ranking lady sits. Don't discuss politics, religion, or anything remotely controversial. The Duchess of Marlborough, a fellow American, Consuelo Vanderbilt, gives you a sympathetic glance across the room, but doesn't approach. She's surrounded by her own circle of aristocratic admirers, playing her role to perfection. The American Duchess, a voice says behind you, the tone making it clear this is not a compliment. How exotic. You turn to find yourself face to face with Lady Dunmore herself, a formidable woman in her 50s with the kind of practiced smile that never reaches her eyes. Lady Dunmore, you say, executing a perfect curtsy. Thank you for including me in your lovely event. How could I not? Everyone is simply dying to meet the woman who captured Harrington. Her gaze travels over you, assessing, judging. Though I must say, you're not what I expected. Oh, you keep your smile fixed in place. And what did you expect, Lady Dunmore? The blunt question catches her off guard. Catherine's advice, be authentic, gives you courage. Well, Lady Dunmore recovers quickly. One hears such things about American women. So forward. So modern. The way she says modern makes it sound like a contagious disease. I hope I won't disappoint you too greatly, you reply with just a hint of irony. A young man nearby smothers a laugh. Lady Dunmore's eyes narrow slightly before she moves on to her next victim. Careful, the young man says, stepping closer. Lady Dunmore has a long memory and a sharp tongue. He's perhaps 30, handsome in an English way, fair hair, blue eyes, the kind of aristocratic features that come from centuries of selective breeding. Lord James Winters, he introduces himself with a slight bow. No title of my own, I'm afraid. Just a younger son with more manners than prospects. There's something refreshingly unpretentious about him, a twinkle in his eye that suggests he doesn't take the pageantry of aristocratic life too seriously. Charlotte Harrington, you reply. Then remember your new status. I mean, the Duchess of Harrington. Still getting used to the title? His smile is understanding rather than mocking. Must be a rather dramatic change, New York to London. You've been to New York? Hope flares at the thought of someone who might understand the world you've left behind. Several times. My brother, the Earl, with all the land and none of the sense, sent me to investigate American investments. He lowers his voice conspiratorially. I rather think he hoped I'd return with an heiress of my own. Alas, I came back with only business contracts and a taste for proper cocktails. You laugh, the sound surprising you after days of careful restraint. New York does make excellent cocktails. Criminal what passes for a mixed drink in London, Lord James agrees, though I did discover a small establishment near Covent Garden that makes a passable Manhattan. Perhaps Charlotte. Edward's voice cuts through the conversation as he materializes at your side. I see you've met Lord James. There's a coolness in his tone that wasn't there before. You realise with a start that you've been talking to Lord James for several minutes, laughing, enjoying yourself, while Edward was elsewhere in the room. Is that not allowed? Are duchesses supposed to remain silently decorative until their husbands return? Yes, we were just discussing New York, you explain. Indeed, Edward's expression is unreadable. The Countess of Warwick was asking after you. We shouldn't keep her waiting. It's a dismissal, not just of the conversation, but of Lord James himself. The younger man takes it with good grace, bowing slightly to you both. A pleasure, Your Grace, he says. I hope we'll have the chance to continue our discussion of American spirits another time. As Edward leads you away, his hand firm on your elbow, you sense his disapproval. Lord James is known for his appreciation of American women, he says quietly. It would be best to maintain a certain distance. The implication is clear. Lord James is a flirt, possibly worse, and not an appropriate companion for the Duchess of Harrington. The warning stings. You weren't flirting, just having a normal conversation with someone who didn't treat you like an exotic specimen or a walking bank account. The Countess of Warwick turns out to be yet another aristocratic matron with perfect posture and a sceptical gaze. The conversation is stilted, formal, filled with references to people and events you don't know. You smile until your face hurts, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and try desperately to remember every lesson Lady Harwick drilled into you. When the musical portion of the evening begins, a soprano performing Italian arias, you're seated between Edward and an elderly duke who falls asleep halfway through the first song. The music washes over you, beautiful but distant, like everything else in this new life. Your gaze drifts around the room, taking in the elaborate gowns, the perfectly coiffed hair, the fortunes in jewels adorning throats and wrists and ears. These people are your peers now, supposedly, but you've never felt more like an outsider. Across the room, Lord James catches your eye and gives you a small, sympathetic smile. You quickly look away, remembering Edward's warning, but the brief moment of connection lingers, a reminder that not everyone in London society views you as an intruder or a curiosity. The soprano finishes to polite applause. Tea and small cakes are served. More introductions, more carefully regulated conversation. You perform your role flawlessly, or at least without obvious mistakes. Edward seems satisfied, if not pleased. By the time your carriage arrives to take you home, exhaustion has settled into your bones. The constant vigilance, the careful self-monitoring, the weight of the Harrington expectations, it's all so much heavier than you imagined. "You did well," Edward says as the carriage pulls away from Lady Dunmore's house. "It's the closest thing to a compliment he's given you." "Thank you," you reply, too tired to feel much pride in the achievement. "Did I integrate successfully?" He glances at you, perhaps catching the hint of irony in your voice. "The Countess of Warwick found you charming. Lady Pembroke has invited us to dinner next week. Lady Dunmore was less enthused, but her opinion carries less weight than it once did." A successful debut, then, by the cold calculus of aristocratic approval. You should feel triumphant. Instead, you just feel tired. "And Lord James?" you ask before you can stop yourself. "Was my conversation with him a social failure?" Edward's jaw tightens slightly. "James Winters is charming and well-connected, but he has a reputation, a certain recklessness with women, particularly American women." "I see." You look out the carriage window at the darkened London streets. "I wasn't flirting with him, if that's what you're concerned about." "I'm concerned about appearances, Charlotte." Edward's voice is cool. "A young, beautiful duchess will attract attention. Some of it welcome, some not. It's important to be discerning." Beautiful. He called you beautiful. It's the first time he's commented on your appearance at all, and it catches you off guard. You look at him, really look at him in the dim light of the carriage. He's handsome in a stern English way. Strong jaw, straight nose, eyes that could be warm if they ever softened. "I'll be more careful," you promise, unsure if you mean it. When you arrive home, Stevens is waiting to help you undress, to remove the diamonds from your hair, to transform you from duchess back to woman. The ritual is becoming familiar, if not comfortable. Alone in your massive bed, you think about the evening, the judgmental gazes, the careful conversations, the brief moment of genuine connection with Lord James. You think about Catherine and the mysterious meeting of dollar duchesses scheduled for Friday. You think about the garden party looming next week, and the Queen who waits to pass judgment on yet another American bride. Your world has expanded and contracted simultaneously, from the freedom of New York to the gilded cage of aristocratic London. Every step is observed, every word analysed, every action weighted with centuries of expectation. But beneath the silk and diamonds and careful manners, you're still Charlotte Miller from Fifth Avenue. You survived your first public appearance. You made connections, Lady Warwick, Lord James, and most importantly, Catherine Ashford and her sisterhood of dollar duchesses. Small victories, perhaps, but victories nonetheless. Sleep comes more easily tonight, and you dream of Friday afternoons and secret sisterhoods and a future where you might find your footing in this strange new world, where you might even find something like happiness or at least purpose in the life you've been sold into. Tomorrow brings Lady Harwick and more lessons. The day after, another dinner with strangers who'll evaluate your worth based on your accent and your manners. But Friday brings Catherine and the Dollar Duchesses, and for the first time since arriving in England, you have something to genuinely look forward to. Friday arrives with the weight of anticipation. The intervening days have passed in a blur of lessons, formal dinners, and careful conversations. Lady Harwick continues her relentless education, drilling you on everything from the correct way to pour tea, never fill the cup more than 3/4 full, to the proper distance to maintain when walking with various ranks of nobility. 3 steps behind a royal, 2 behind a duke, not your husband, 1 behind an earl or marquess. You absorb it all with outward compliance and inner rebellion. Each rule, each correction, each subtle sigh of disapproval when your American accent slips through, they're all stones in the wall being built around you, but now you have a secret. Catherine and the Dollar Duchesses. A crack in that wall. Edward has been preoccupied with estate business, appearing only at dinner to inquire about your progress with Lady Harwick or to inform you of upcoming social obligations. He seems satisfied with your performance at Lady Dunmore's musical evening, though he hasn't mentioned Lord James again. At breakfast, you gather your courage to mention your plans for the afternoon. I've received an invitation to take tea with Lady Winchester, you say, keeping your voice casual. On Park Lane, I thought I might accept. Edward glances up from his newspaper. Winchester, Chicago money, if I recall correctly. Yes, her husband is the Earl. He considers this, and you hold your breath. The Winchesters are well connected, despite their recent elevation. It would be a useful acquaintance. Recent elevation, as if a title that's only been in the family for 300 years instead of 800 is practically nouveau riche. Then I have your permission to go? You hate having to ask, hate the way marriage has reduced you to seeking approval for a simple social call. Of course, take the carriage, be back by 6. We're dining with the Pembrokes tonight. Another dinner? Another performance, but you're too focused on the afternoon's secret meeting to worry about that now. Thank you. I'll be prompt. Lady Winchester's house on Park Lane makes Harrington House look positively modest, a limestone palace with columns and balconies and more windows than you can count. It screams American money married to English title. Footmen in elaborate livery usher you inside through a marble entrance hall where a crystal chandelier the size of a small carriage hangs overhead. Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington, the butler announces as you enter a drawing room larger than most ballrooms. And there they are, the Dollar Duchesses, 7 women of various ages, all beautifully dressed, all wearing the kind of jewellery that only comes with serious money. All watching you with expressions ranging from curiosity to sympathy to assessment. Catherine Ashford rises first, coming to greet you. Charlotte, I'm so glad you could come. The use of your first name immediately sets the tone. Here, you're not just the Duchess of Harrington, you're Charlotte. Lady Winchester, a striking blonde woman in her 30s, approaches next. Welcome to our little gathering, Duchess, or should I say, welcome to the American Embassy. The others laugh, and you realise this is an old joke among them. Call me Charlotte, please, you say, and the simple request feels like shedding a heavy cloak. Then I'm Emma, Lady Winchester replies. All that lady business is for public consumption only. She introduces the others: Margaret, Countess of Dorset, Pittsburgh Steel, Louisa, Viscountess Harding, San Francisco Shipping, Pamela, Lady Thornfield, Boston Banking, Clara, Marchioness of Westmere, Philadelphia Real Estate, and Sarah, Duchess of Broughton, New York Finance. Each woman represents a different American fortune, a different English title, a different transaction disguised as a love match. You're ushered to a seat in the circle, a cup of tea pressed into your hands, and suddenly the questions begin. How are you settling in? Has Lady Harwick driven you mad yet? Have you met the Queen? How terrible is your mother-in-law? It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Genuine interest, genuine concern, genuine understanding. Ladies, Catherine intercedes finally, let's not terrify her on her first visit. Charlotte's only been in London for a week. A week? Sarah, Duchess of Broughton, widens her eyes. You poor thing, you're still in the what have I done phase. When does that phase end, you ask, only half joking. The women exchange glances. It doesn't, exactly, Emma says carefully. It just evolves. Into what? Resignation, says Louisa. Adaptation, offers Margaret. Strategy, says Clara with a slightly wicked smile. They each tell a piece of their story, how they came to England, how they struggled, how they survived. Emma's husband gambled away half her fortune before she took control of the purse strings. Margaret's mother-in-law tried to send her back to America when she didn't produce an heir in the first year. Louisa discovered her husband had a second family in Scotland. They need our money, Clara says bluntly. But they resent needing it, and they definitely resent us. Not all of them, Catherine amends. Some of the younger generation are different, more accepting, like Lord James Winters, Pamela adds with a knowing smile. I hear he was quite attentive to our newest Duchess at Lady Dunmore's musical evening. You feel your cheeks flush. We only spoke briefly about New York. James is one of the good ones, Catherine says. His brother, the Earl, married an American too, Helen Woodbury from Baltimore. She's abroad at the moment, or she'd be here today. Edward, my husband, warned me about him, you admit. Said he has a reputation with American women. The women exchange glances again, something unspoken passing between them. Lord James appreciates American directness, Catherine says carefully, and yes, he's been linked romantically with several American visitors to London, but he's also a valuable ally, one of the few aristocrats who treats us as equals, not just walking bank accounts. Wait, it gets better. Emma's like, you want to know the real reason most of these English lords warned their wives away from James? He encourages us to maintain some independence, to keep a portion of our money in our own names, to have a voice in how our fortunes are spent. And you're thinking, so basic human dignity is a threat to the aristocracy. Cool. There's a moment of silence as you absorb this. The idea of maintaining financial independence hasn't even occurred to you. Your father transferred your dowry directly to Edward, $2.5 million in railroad stock, the income now controlled entirely by your husband. Is that possible, you ask? To maintain control of your own money? It's not just possible, it's essential, Clara says firmly. My husband nearly bankrupted us both in his first year as Marquess. I had to take drastic measures. She threatened to return to Philadelphia and stop the flow of funds, Emma explains with admiration. The Marquess sobered up very quickly. I still handle all the estate finances, Clara adds. Henry has an allowance, like a child. It's humiliating for him, but better than debtor's prison. The thought of Edward on an allowance is so absurd you almost laugh. He's the Duke of Harrington. He has 800 years of aristocratic authority behind him, and yet I don't even know the state of the Harrington finances, you confess. I've seen the household accounts, but nothing about the estate itself. The women exchange significant looks. That's your first task then, Catherine says. Knowledge is power, Charlotte. Find out exactly what your money is paying for. The conversation shifts to other matters: the upcoming season, the garden party at Buckingham Palace, the latest gossip about the Prince of Wales and his many mistresses, but your mind keeps returning to the finances, to the possibility that you might have more control than you realised. "We meet every Friday," Emma tells you as the gathering winds down. "Sometimes here, sometimes at Catherine's, occasionally at Broughton House when Sarah's husband is away." "Which is often," Sarah adds dryly. "The Duke finds Paris more entertaining than his wife." "Will you join us next week?" Catherine asks. "After your garden party? We'll want to hear all about the Queen." "Yes," you say without hesitation. "Yes, I'd like that very much." As your carriage carries you back to Harrington House, your mind races with everything you've learned. These women, these dollar duchesses, have carved out spaces for themselves within the rigid constraints of aristocratic marriage. They've found ways to maintain their American identities while navigating English society. They've built a sisterhood across the divides of title and background. For the first time, you can envision a future here that isn't just about endurance, a future where you might actually have a voice, a purpose beyond producing an heir and maintaining the Harrington legacy. But first, you need information. You need to understand exactly what your father's millions are funding. Dinner with the Pembrokes passes in a blur of conversation you barely register. You smile at the right moments, speak when spoken to, perform your role as Duchess to perfection, but your mind is elsewhere, turning over plans and possibilities. When you return home, Edward retires to his study with brandy and cigars. You should go upstairs, should let Stevens prepare you for bed. Instead, you find yourself hesitating in the hallway outside Edward's study, gathering courage. You knock softly. "Enter," he calls, sounding surprised. No one disturbs the Duke in his sanctuary. He looks up from his desk as you slip inside, his expression questioning. "Charlotte, is something wrong?" "No," you say, moving further into the room. It's deeply masculine. Dark wood panelling, leather chairs, shelves of books that look actually read rather than just displayed. "I wanted to ask you something." "At this hour?" But he gestures to the chair opposite his desk. "What is it?" You sit, smoothing your skirts, choosing your words carefully. "I realised